when something hurts, the thing to focus on is to make the hurting stop. You don't go from feeling bad to feeling good. From feeling bad, you have to come to a place where you don't feel bad. That's not necessarily a place where you feel good. Good morning, Cami. Good to see you. Elena, Tumika, good to see you guys. Dolores, good morning. So good to see you. Awesome. So how are these two things connected together? How is inspired action connected to making going from one place on the emotional scale to another place? How is inspired action connected to that? Because I'll tell you, they are connected. On the surface, it seems like, how can that be? But they are connected. Let me explain with my beautiful pen. Here it is. What I want to bring to you this morning is that inspiration doesn't just happen here. Inspiration is happening at every level of the emotional scale because of momentum. Okay? So momentum has pulling power. And the more momentum you have on a specific emotion, then that emotion is pulling you. And so you can be inspired to act from a place of anger. We know so many people, those who get into the news, who are inspired from a negative place. And then there are those people who go into revenge, from anger to revenge. When you act out from that place, that is inspired action. But inspired action, just like anything else, can be negative or positive. It depends. What is the qualifier? The qualifier is, where are you on the emotional scale? And that's why it is so important for us to understand where we are emotionally. That is why it's so important to do that emotional benchmarking. What does love and joy feel like? What does it feel like to be angry? So that when you're in the midst of those emotions, you can tell the difference. Because if you don't know how to tell the difference, how are you going to change anything? You can't change anything if you don't know what needs changing. And that's why knowing our emotional state is so important. And it's okay when you begin your journey, if you don't know what your emotional state is, if you don't know how to tell one emotion apart from another emotion, it's okay. I can tell you, and you've heard me say this before, that was me. I could not tell the difference between one place and another place on the emotional scale. That's why I had to simplify the emotional scale. Abraham teaches 22 different emotions and they're labeled. And it just drove me nuts because I couldn't tell them apart. Oh, I know everyone's not like me. Maybe you can tell them apart, but I honestly could not tell them apart. I could not tell the difference between what is frustration and what is worry and what is anxiety. I couldn't tell the difference between those three. To me, they were all one jumbled mess. But Abraham differentiates. That's okay. But that's why I compressed the emotional scale into just two parts. The top part that feels good, in between is worry, and the bottom part. It made it easier for me to tell where I was on the emotional scale. So when you feel inspired to acting, people feel... I was talking to this young woman yesterday who is having relationship problems, and she wanted to call her partner and shout at him. She was inspired to do so. And she had behaved that way in the past. And so I was trying to explain to her that yes, she was inspired to doing those things. But where was she on the emotional scale? So when you act in response to momentum of any type, it feels good. But are you acting from a place that's low on the emotional scale or a place that's high on the emotional scale? That's the qualifier. But action in response to momentum will always feel good, because opposing momentum feels bad. Imagine for a minute that you are Superman, and here's this train. It was supposed to go on that track, but it went on a different track, and now it's heading for an accident. So momentum is taking it towards an accident. It's going with full speed towards that accident, waiting to happen. For Superman to stop that train, it'll take less effort than me, but it'll take effort, right? It's much easier just to let the train go. So when somebody annoys you, it feels so much easier just to hit them. But you're doing it from a place that is low on the emotional scale. So stopping a negative emotion, stopping that momentum to act, the inspiration to take action from a negative place, it's not easy. Because momentum will drive you to taking action. The thing that you need to identify is, where am I on the emotional scale as I do this thing? And when you act from a place high on the emotional scale, it is always a win-win. Nobody gets hurt. This is why when I say I don't have to worry about people, what people will do, what other people will do, and how it will affect me, is because when I'm high on the emotional scale, they can't come there. So I don't have to worry. And when you create momentum high on the emotional scale, then the inspired action that you take corresponds to a win-win situation. Nobody gets taken advantage of. Everybody wins. And that feeling, it just magnifies the feeling of feeling good. You can feel whether you feel good or bad. If that were the only thing you need to find out, do I feel good or not so good? And then decide whether or not you should act. Because momentum will make the action feel good. Momentum will make you do things that in that moment feel good. It feels delicious. Feels delicious. When somebody has said biting things to you in the past that have hurt your heart, and you get an opportunity to give it back to them in the same coin, that feels delicious. Because there's so much momentum to it. And then you want to say something scathing in return, right? This is how arguments escalate into fights. Because people are moved into momentum. Hundreds of years of not liking each other will drive nations into war. Hundreds of years of arguments and bantering to and fro will make them feel that war is the answer. But is war the answer? Is everyone winning? No, everyone is losing. that cannot be the right answer. So, a lot of times people say to me, but Zara, I slapped that person, or I said this hateful thing to them and it felt really good. And what about that gunman who gunned down so many people with a smile on his face? Yes, it did feel good in the moment because it was momentum that instigated you. You could not control your own momentum. So you acted because of momentum. You didn't stop, you see, sweetheart, to ask yourself the question, is this a win-win? Am I high on the emotional scale? Because I'll tell you something, when someone is in a place of eagerness and hope and satisfaction and love and joy, those people don't hurt anyone. They don't hurt anyone, including themselves. That's why they succeed. That's why they live magical lives. So if we could just understand this one little thing, that momentum leads to manifestation. Momentum on any emotion will lead to an inspired action. So to be inspired is not the only important thing. The important thing is, where on the emotional scale are you receiving your inspiration from?